Welcome to my channel. I'm Tuppence. I'm going to make a bowl this week. Summer is arriving. We are actually starting to get some really nice hot temperatures. So I figure I want to try and make an ice type bowl. I got this from Temu and I'm going to use some Let's Resin deep pour resin. I'm not going to use it because it's too deep. It's because I want to put in some of these. Now this is cat litter. It's a crystalline form, unused obviously. I figure this will not only help me not use quite so much resin, but it should give me that icy look. So I'm going to mix that with the deep pour resin, and hopefully, because that's such a liquid resin, I shouldn't get too many bubbles. So I'm going to mix up, I don't know, 6-7 ounces, maybe 200 grams, 200 mils. And we'll see how we go, because the crystals themselves are going to displace some of that resin. So hopefully I won't need so much. So I'm going to get my PPE on and mix up my resin. As I mentioned, this bowl came from Temu, and it does have quite strong supports here, but they don't go all the way down to the surface of the table. So in order to make sure I don't get any sagging, I measured from the edge of the support up to the rim, and it's about the same height as this pot of glitter. So I'm going to put that underneath the middle, and that should support the middle so that it doesn't sag. There isn't going to be a lot of resin on top, but because I'm adding some of the crystals, there might be some added weight, so it's just a precaution. I've mixed up enough resin, I hope, and now I'm adding the crystals. Just move this over so you can see what I'm doing. I need to pour enough of these in here that it kind of resembles a slushy. You want this to be fluid because it's going to have to move into the bottom of the bowl, but at the same time I need enough crystals so that they don't float, and they will rise to the top of the mould, which will be the bottom of my bowl, and then I'm just going to end up with clear resin for the rest of it, which is not what I want. So you can see this does look like a slushy, and I'm hoping I've got enough. I'm going to add some of these opalescent hex crystals, which I got also from Temu. I will leave a link to as many of the things as I'm using in the description box below. Obviously not the cat litter, you just get those from your grocery store, or I think I actually got mine from just a discount store. So mix that in, and I'm really hoping this is going to give me the frozen look. To be honest, I didn't want all these little blue flecks. I just wanted the white crystals, but I wasn't going to sit there and pick them out. So I'll see what kind of effect I get from this. Make sure that's centered, and then I can start pouring this in. The other thing I need to be careful of is that the crystals can be sharp, and when I'm moving them around, trying to get them to go to the bottom of my bowl, I'm just going to use my stick. I'm going to gently scoop them, and I'm trying not to scratch them along my mould because I don't want to damage the mould for future use. You know, I may want to do a clear resin bowl in future. So I'm really gently coaxing them down to the edge of the bowl. I will put the stick down there and try and make sure that it reaches the bottom, but this is primarily why I'm using a deep pour resin that is liquid. It should find its way down to the bottom of the bowl, and it also should be able to degas. I don't know how these crystals are going to react, whether they're going to soak up the resin, whether they give off bubbles. Obviously, it's cat litter. It is designed to absorb some kind of moisture. So this is kind of an experiment. I have used these crystals in resin before. I just used normal epoxy resin. It was craft resin, and it didn't seem to produce that many bubbles, but then I used a colorant with it. I've never done it where I've kept the resin clear. I've partially filled this, and I'm going to pick this up now and just give it a gentle squeeze. Make sure that there aren't any sort of extra thick lumps, and give a chance for the crystals to move down to the bottom. I'm sort of gently squeezing with my thumb and pushing down, trying to drag those crystals down and distribute them evenly along the bottom. And now I can pour some more in. You can see there's a lot of liquid. I want to move the crystals off of the top and keep the base of that as much as possible as clear, because I am going to add some more in there. I know I haven't got enough, and I'm going to put a coloured base on there, so I want that to be as free of the crystals as possible, but I do need them to be down the edge of the bowl. Scrape out what I've got in my pot, hope that that reaches at least the top edge where it suddenly becomes the base, and just try and drag those crystals to the side and let the clear resin fill into the centre. I don't mind if there's a few bits of glitter. There will be. I'm not going to be able to move them entirely out the way. I'm just going to see if I can coax any bubbles out. So now I need to leave this to cure. Okay, it's been a couple of days and that's now set. This is ordinary craft resin I've just mixed up, and I've got a little bit of J. Diction's blue resin colorant. Try and put 1 drop in there. I can always add some more later, but I do want this to be a very pale blue. At the moment it is transparent, but I want it to be opaque, so I'm going to add a little bit of white pigment paste, and that will make it opaque, and it's also going to change the color. It will lighten this color as well. So I'll just mix that in till I've got no streaks, and then I'm going to add the white pigment. I'm using Supreme White, and you can find that on Apex Resins. I used this earlier on today, so it's already been mixed up. I'm just going to get a little bit onto my stick and then mix that into the blue resin, and I'll see what that looks like. I'm going to scrape that off on the stick and then mix that in. Yeah, that looks like the colour I was looking for, so I'm going to clean my stick off and I'll wipe that on a paper towel. And I've got something in there, so I'm just going to fish that out. I'm going to add some glitter because I can't have enough glitter. If you're going for an icy frozen bowl, you definitely need some glitter. This is a holographic glitter, and it should sink, even though I've got an opaque resin, it should sink slightly to what will be the top of the inside of the bowl. Mix that in, and then I'm ready to pour this, and hopefully I've got just enough that this will form a nice flat base on the bowl. So it looks like I need to scrape out every last bit in my cup, and I should be okay. It looks like it's come to the surface. Just make sure it gets to the edge because there are crystals that are forming a dam. And then I'm going to give this a spritz of isopropyl alcohol and leave this to set. Demold time. I do have just a few little bubbles that obviously came up from the crystal, and I can see one along the edge as well where it didn't go quite underneath. I may well have bubbles where the crystals are. In fact, I can see that I do as I'm pulling this mould away. I'll be able to deal with those. I'll just infill those with some UV resin so that they're not sharp. I do need to deburr this edge anyway. So I'm going to flip this bowl over and try and turn the mould inside out. It's pretty stretchy silicone, but it is a bit of a workout. Once you get the bottom of the mould flipped over and turned upright, you can just slide it up the sides and then just pull it off the top. So it's not so hard to do. And I'm leaving this in real time so you can see just how easy it is. And then give the centre a scrunch and you'll be able to pull it out of the middle. Well, I think that definitely looks like ice. I love the glitter in there. I really like it. I'm not so keen on that clear band that I've got all the way around. I will do something with it, but I do like that base. Definitely need to fill all of these holes. They're quite sharp. But for the rest of the bowl, it looks pretty good. UV resin will take care of those. I'm going to get my craft knife and just deburr the edges, and I'll fill these holes with this high viscosity UV resin. I'm just using my craft knife to run along the edge where the resin met up to the mould. You get a little sharp edge, and can get a really nasty cut from it, rather like a paper cut. So I'm just taking that down so that it's flat and removing the worst of the lumps. And I can see all the little holes along that edge. I'm doing this while this is still soft, so this has literally just come out of the mould, and it's much easier to use. You can get a deburring tool, I just don't have one. Now I'll start filling in the holes and then use my torch to cure it enough so that it won't run. And once I've gone round and filled them all in, I'm going to pop this underneath my UV lamp and cure it for a while, and then I'm just going to stick it in the sunshine for a bit. Okay, that's been cleaned up. I've taken the worst of the sharp edge off and filled most of the holes, so it's not going to tear my gloves. There's just a few areas where I still need to clean them up a little bit, but for the most part it's done. And I don't like this clear edge, and I was debating what to do about it. I think I'm going to try and use some silver flakes and fill them in. Whether I just go around the edge or fill the whole lot, I don't know. I'll think about that. It could make it look like a geode. I did use my chrome markers just to run it along the edge, and you can just see a remnant of it there. But I didn't like it, so I cleaned that off with some alcohol. But I think this silver flake, and if I attach it using some UV resin, I'll just paint that on and then stick the flakes on. Now whether I do it on the outside or the inside, I'm not sure. Now I think I'm going to do it on the outside because the inside of the bowl is so nice and smooth already, but the outside is a little rough in places, and there are a few sort of bubbles where the crystals touched the edge of the mould. So I wanted to put a layer of resin on the outside of this anyway. So yeah, I think I will attach the flakes on the outside. I've put some UV resin in a little silicone cup, and I just have a paintbrush. I use this paintbrush solely for applying resin, UV resin in particular, but you can clean it with alcohol and a paper towel afterwards, and it remains nice and soft. So I'm going to start painting the surface, and I'm going to do it a little bit at a time, just because that's easier and I'll know where I'm going and where I've been. These are cheap flakes. They're a bit clumpy. You're meant to mix these actually in with your resin rather than apply them to the outside. But this is fine. I'm going to pat them to the surface and cure them. And then once they're cured, I'll just use a brush, a stiff brush, or actually I've got a sponge that you use for scraping off the flakes. And I'll remove the excess and repeat the procedure until I've gone all the way around. I'll be able to put the lamp into the center of the bowl and cure it from behind because it's clear. Alright, that's all done all the way around and cured. I'm just getting rid of any loose bits using a sponge. It's a slightly scratchy sponge that is meant for applying gilding flakes. And then once I've got the worst of this off, I'm gathering it all up in a tray. I can move that out of the way, and I've got a soft microfiber cloth that I'm just going to wipe over the bowl to remove any pieces that are clinging to it by static, because I want to give this a coat of UV resin and I don't want to be sticking random pieces everywhere. I like that effect much better, but you can see that it's very shiny in places and not so shiny in some. See, I've got bits that are sticking to the bottom of the bowl as well. I'm going to add a coat of UV resin over this just to seal it and to restore some of that shine. I applied a bead of resin along the top and used my gloves just to smooth it over the surface. And I did that all the way round, curing with the lamp as I went, and then I popped it in the sunshine and left it to make sure that it was completely cured all the way around. It's had the coat now and it's cured. You can see it's a lot shinier, but you can see that this looks very sort of like glittery or crumpled, and that's because of the cheap foil that I used. Not an effect I really like. This, however, this is nice and shiny and smooth, and that's because I remembered that I had some metallic UV nail gel in silver, and I painted that on. And because it is a UV nail gel, I just cured it. I'm going to show you what it looks like in the pot. It is literally like liquid silver. It is so beautiful. So I'm going to paint over parts of this area, just dabbing it and filling in to give it that really shiny, smooth look. You can see it's transforming it. I'm going to do it a bit of a time and cure it, but I will go all the way around and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. So stay tuned for the photos. The light shines through the crystals and the gaps that are in them, and you get all the different colours from the glitter. I really like this bowl. It's giving me icy vibes, and that silver metallic I think was the perfect addition. If you've liked this, please give me a thumbs up, comment, share. Please subscribe if you haven't. It's free and you will help my channel to bring you more content like this. Thank you so much for watching. See you again soon. Bye.